Now it is time for our program, which we're going to go ahead and start just a little bit early to give you a little more time, Raven. And so take those last couple bites. And I want to introduce Richard to come up here and introduce our speaker.
Let me start this introduction with a quote by Bianca Sparacino. Some of the kindest souls I know have lived in a world that was not so kind to them. Some of the best human beings I know have been through so much at the hands of others, and they still love so deeply, they still care. Sometimes it's the people who have been hurt the most who refuse to be hard in this world because they would never want to make another person feel the same way they felt. If that isn't something to be in awe of, I don't know what is. End quote. This quote popped up on my Facebook feed as I was writing this introduction. I believe it was divine intervention because Raven Faith is that person. Raven emerged from a severely abused childhood, enduring physical, mental, and psychological torment, including starvation, isolation, and abandonment on 2 occasions. Upon fleeing her abusive environment, she encountered further traumas: kidnapping, stalking, poisoning, robbery, and a harrowing collision with an 18-wheeler that left her with a collapsed spine. When I first met Raven 2 years ago, her past struggles were unknown to me. Yet as we conversed for hours, her dedication to aiding children shone through. Together we discussed her vision for the Children's Compassion Network, her nonprofit organization. This is Raven. From her own trial, she forged an unyielding commitment to support children. Raven's book, Perfectly Broken, draws from her own journey, delving into themes of domestic violence, child abuse, molestation, suicide, and abandonment. Through her narrative, she shares invaluable insights and coping strategies honed through adversity. Let's extend a warm welcome to Raven.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your friendship. And thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I'm really honored and grateful for this. Thank you. Sorry about that. The Children's Compassion Network really was born out of the rather unique perspective I had on abuse based on my childhood and my background. I have been through a lot of trauma and abuse, and I actually, during my childhood, I was raised in a foreign missionary family where we were all in ministry work. So it was really unique because we had, at the same time we had all this faith in religion, we also had tremendous abuse that was hidden. So I did not know that anything that was happening to me was not normal or not right. And every weekend, pretty much back in the 1970s, when I was a little girl, we were in a Subaru wagon driving around the southeast part of the country in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and my father would do his presentation talking about the orphans and the poor children in a country halfway around the world. And I watched every weekend as the people were moved by his images. Back then, technology consisted of just a carousel with slides because it was 1970. So it was like there was nothing there, but there was so much response. And as a child, when we would be driving around in rural America, I was always captivated by the people. I call it the people between the dots. So I was always fascinated with all the people on the map between the major cities. And rural America has a very, very special place in my heart because I've always had a heart for people who have no resources and no recognition really to speak of. So when I was a little girl and I saw this, as wonderful as it is for people to do ministry work and advocacy work for countries all over the world, my innocent little mind was, okay, what about these children that I see here? And I didn't, and God bless everybody that does everything they do, but for my little heart, all I wanted to do when I grow up is help the children in rural America and our country. That was, for me, my mission field. And I would see people, they were like, I want to go, to the mission trips, and they want to get a passport, and they want to go help people. And absolutely, when you go to a foreign country and you come back, it's very life transforming, absolutely wonderful. I just want to tell people, it's like, if you want to change the world and you want to make an impact, you don't need a passport. You just open your eyes and look around you. Everywhere you look, there are people who are hurting and broken and need help. And so, you know, there's a quote that says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that always just really resonated with me with my particular calling, because this country that we all enjoy so much freedom in, there's so much that needs help here, in my opinion. And I think if we would basically help to heal the people, if you want to heal our country, you heal the people. That always is like something that really struck me. I was like, you know, we have crime, we have drugs, we have addiction, we have people, and we're all trying to fight these symptoms. Why is there drugs, and why are people addicted, and why is there violence? If you would heal the people, a lot of these things would just go away, or at least be tremendously helped, and we would certainly be able to do a better job helping other people around the world if we would heal our own country. So that's something, just as a little girl, that was something that was really deeply rooted in me. So basically, two things that I learned when watching my father, who was a pastor and a foreign missionary. I grew up mostly in a parsonage in Texas, and then we also lived in Tennessee. But being that we lived in the parsonage, which is basically a house behind the church, I kind of got a very good look behind the curtain, if you will, of ministry work. And for better or worse, I got to see kind of the underbelly of what happens in ministry. And as noble and wonderful as a lot of the intentions sounded and were for a lot of people, I got to see as a little girl the corruption and misappropriation of funds that really, really affected me profoundly. So much so that when I started doing my own ministry work, if anything, it swung me way to the other direction, because I never asked for help from anyone. So I always self-funded everything 100% myself, because it never occurred to me to ask for help. And I actually got pretty far by myself, just with tenacity, and I was just so driven. It's like all I've ever wanted my entire life is to advocate on behalf of people. That's like the only thing I've ever wanted. And so I did whatever it took to fund that. And I actually got very far with my public speaking, and I worked in rural East Texas. That was where I did the lion's share of most of my speaking. And I got to see like such amazing impact. And one thing that really struck me is the simplicity of what it takes to make an impact. It's not about flashing lights and fancy production and, you know, having tickets to an event. It's about people just caring and being relevant and being authentic. Because I would go to East Texas, and a lot of times I wouldn't even schedule anything. I would go speak in the school, and then automatically my whole calendar would fill up for 2 weeks with slots. I became known as like the mender, fixer of broken people, and I always focused on kids, but then people started bringing me all ages, and I didn't ask for it. It was just an organic thing. So it was what I was made for. So that's why it came so easy to me. The more traumatized people are, it seemed like the easier it was for me to reach them. And so for that, I see my experiences in my childhood as like a gift. So it's what I choose to do with it that makes it valuable. You know, if you don't do anything, then it's just sad. But for me, it has tremendously driven me to do things to help others, because I'm determined to take every bad experience that happens to me and to help others, but not only to help others, but this is what I've been able to do with the kids I've worked with. And I've had the joy and privilege of seeing this happen, because I've been working with kids now over 30 years. I've gotten to see the kids I work with in schools. Now they're young mothers. They've overcome tremendous backgrounds where they look like there was no hope for them, and now they're like dynamic, empowered young women and mothers. And the joy I feel when I see that is just incredible. And when I look at people in the world that are damaged or struggling with issues, I see potential. So that's something that as a child, I was always a little different, if you want to say it that way. I just viewed things very differently, and I was always questioning and creating systems. So that was a lifelong thing for me. So as I started creating the Children's Compassion Network, which is my charity, basically, I'll throw an analogy out to you, kind of the way I saw the world and in America in particular. So if you have really good-hearted, intelligent people with really good intentions, and everybody around the country is inventing a wheel. It's like, okay, why don't we find out who made the best wheel and use that and move on to another topic. So like foster care is something I'm super passionate about. So there are all these puzzle pieces when you get into foster care, which is very badly in need of all kinds of assistance right now. I'm very actively working on a project for foster care right now. But it's like if we would take the energy that we're expending working on the same thing, and then share puzzle pieces, if you will. So I had a Zoom meeting with some foster care people in Nashville a few months ago, and we're talking about all these ideas, many of which I've been kicking around for well over 25 years. And apparently several of these ideas they have mastered and come up with a brilliant, super effective solutions for. And I was so excited to hear that, but I was like, wow, what if we could take these initiatives and roll them out nationally and share them? If we could do that with all the gaps, it's like puzzle pieces, we could come up with all these pieces and instantaneously we could have such a more effective way to help fix the things that are wrong with foster care and to help people be more effective, and most of all the children. We could give them a better experience and a higher success rate. So Children's Compassion Network is basically a charity that will network other charities together and promote them. So I'm very passionate about the idea of it because I know that it works on the levels that I've seen it implemented, and if we could just connect. So for basically any charity any of you out here are passionate about, I have basically simple systems where if applied and we start sharing information and we identify the best solutions and we roll them out nationally, we can move the needle tremendously very quickly on things that nobody comes up with a final solution for. So basically that's a lot of the core intention and why I call it a network, because when we network together, I've always been a uniter instead of a divider, and like the division in the world today is just very saddening to me, because a lot of the evil that thrives in the world and a lot of the good that could be done is because we don't seek to work with people that are not like us. I feel like if we could just find a large group of people and focus on what we agree on instead of finding reasons to disqualify who we don't want to work with. You know, like if foster care or domestic violence or child abuse, whatever that is, it's like regardless of your religious affiliation, political, all of that, we could just focus on the one thing, we could accomplish so much more towards the benefit of helping children. Basically, just looking at that issue, it's like get a room full of people to all agree that we need to help our children. Yes, well, let's focus on that and let's just work together. And I've seen that happen before, because at any given time when I've been working on any project, I intentionally and incidentally end up having people with very polar opposite views, but we all just focus on what we agree on. So that's another thing that I hope to really roll out nationally, like the idea of us really, instead of looking to disqualify, trying to get people to work together. I wanted to share really quick about when I did get removed out of my house, where I got a lot of my passion and who was basically my mentor in all of this. Basically, by the time I had gotten removed out of my house, and Richard did such an amazing job with the introduction, so you kind of have an idea. I did not have the most idyllic childhood. But by the time I got removed out of my home at this height, I weighed 84 pounds. So yeah, I was not in good shape. And at that point, I got brought into the home of this amazing woman, foster care parent named Nancy Woodall. Now, Nancy Woodall in the Southeast United States is an icon and a legend. Everyone knows who she is because she's had, goodness gracious, probably over 700 foster kids over 40 years. And what she's really known for, in addition to many other things, is she actually takes the kids nobody can handle or can keep. She intentionally takes them, and she just has this amazing gift to be able to do that. So when I got brought into her home, after being in such a traumatic childhood and having that really dark background, to be brought into a home with such an extraordinary role model woman that was so good at working with kids, I organically and without anybody prompting me, I started working alongside her, and without realizing it, all my experiences fed me into being able to work really, really effectively with trauma victims. So, fast forward many years, back during COVID, I actually got to go back. I had not seen her for a long time because I live in California, but I went and I got to spend time with her, and she had a young girl, and just to give her a name, we'll call her Daisy, one of her foster kids. So I came to visit her one day, and she had this little girl sitting at her dining table, and I opened the door. We always called Nancy's house Grand Central Station because everybody would just walk in and out. I mean, when you have had 700 foster kids in 40 years, they kind of just come raid the fridge and they leave. That's just kind of Nancy's house. So Grand Central Station, and the doors open. So I would just pop in. I walked in like, we always do, and she had a little girl sitting next to her, probably about 13, 14 years old. And immediately, what I love about this, just to preface this, what I love about this is it was completely unplanned. So what happened in the next few sentences really was meant to happen. So I walk in and I asked Nancy, I was like, oh, I didn't know you were getting another girl. She was like, oh yeah, this is Daisy. I was like, oh, hi Daisy. And so Daisy, a typical withdrawn, level 4 suicidal, just really, really off the charts, traumatized girl. So I'm looking at her, now I'm like, I'm like 50 years old. I'm used to working with her kids when I'm a teenager. Fast forward 30 years, now I'm a grown up, right? So I'm trying to talk to her like that, and to my surprise, she responded exactly the same as the kids did in 1990. I was just like, wow, this is very interesting. So I said exactly the same thing to her, which goes something like this. I was like, when I looked at her, I could tell she was kind of like, who's this lady? What do you want? This is like, are you one of the social workers? And so I was like, okay, I need to find a connection point here. So I looked at her, I was like, Daisy, I said, I used to be one of Nancy's girls. And when I said that, then she kind of like arched her eyebrows up, kind of like, oh, okay. So kind of like we had a little connection there. I said, had I known that you were here, I said I would have brought all my kit with me. I said I always love to give Nancy's girls makeovers when they come to her home. I do their makeup, I do their hair, and we dress up. I was like, if I had known you were here, I would have brought my stuff. I said, but if you want to think about it, you always have to give them permission. It has to be their idea. I said, if you would like, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll bring all my stuff, and we can do that. And then you just leave it and let them think. So she thought about it for a moment. She was like, yeah, I would like to do that. I was like, great. So I came back the next day, and just like I had done with countless other kids over the last, 30 years, I did her makeup, I did her hair, I cleared her acne up, everything. And so we do her makeup, and a few days later, Danny Ray, who is, I wish I had time to talk about him, he's the foster care worker who visits like 3 or 4 counties in Middle Tennessee. So he's very, very much on the pulse of what's going on with all the kids because he drives around and checks on them. So this girl Daisy was way off the charts level for suicidal, and she was quite something when she first arrived there. So 3 or 4 days later, when he comes to do a house check, I'm in one of the bedrooms with Daisy and one of Nancy's nieces, and I'm doing their makeup, and we're all just kind of sitting around like girls do. And he sticks his head in and he looks at her, and he looks at me. We all kind of turned to see who's at the door, and he was like, "What have you done?" And I was like, "What do you mean, what have I done?" He was like, "What did you do?" I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He was like, "We'll talk later." So, I talked to him later. He's like, "How in the world did you get her from here to here in 3 days? What have you been doing?" And I was like, "I just do what I always do." So this led to many hours of other discussions where this idea of the networking and sharing of knowledge, because it's like, do I have a psychology degree? No, I do not. Now, you can bring a social worker in, you can bring a PhD in, you can bring anybody in. There is something to work alongside people that have actual experience. It's intangible, you can't see it, but it's so powerful when you have that. And kind of the culmination of when I was working with Daisy, we were back on the back porch, and she, at this point, still thinks, I don't know who she thinks I am. She's just like, I'm just some lady that comes to visit her every day. So at some point, we're back on the back porch, and it's so interesting, because back in 1990, 91, and all the 90s, when I was working with Nancy's kids, the best and most powerful times we often had was sitting on the back porch, where we had a bit of privacy. A lot of times they were smoking their cigarettes, and I don't smoke, so I was just inhaling their secondhand smoke, listening to them. And that was actually some of the most powerful bonding experiences, just sitting and being with them. And so Destiny, on this first particular day, Daisy, she says to me, she was like, so how long have you been working for Nancy? And I said, I don't work for Nancy. And she's like, looking at me quizzically, because she's like, well, why are you here? Why do you come here every day? And why are you spending time with me? And I told her, I said, I come here because I love you. And I'm sorry. That basic idea with all my events, they've always been free. And there's something about having events where the kids know that you're coming just because you love them. And the authenticity of just being real. So fast forward, I wrote my book, my story, and I was about to go on a world tour. This very powerful music producer in Nashville found out about my documentary about domestic violence against children and the domestic trafficking of children in America, which I've been on the forefront of that since 2008. I'm super passionate about that. People did not want to hear about it. I took my documentary to Oprah and Tyler Perry Studios and Dr. Phil. I sent it everywhere because being that I had the background I had, I knew how to get the information, but then I knew that it was, of course, beyond me. Who am I to carry this project? So I immediately bundled it nicely together, and I pushed through 5,000 people to get to Oprah and held my letter up. And her security detail just stopped. I think they were just astonished at my audacity. And she read my letter. She did. She read it, and she kept looking back at me, probably thinking, who in the world is this crazy chick? But there's nothing short of illegal or immoral I will not do to get my mission forward, because I really, really live for this. I'm not scared of looking foolish or crazy or anything. If I can get there. In fact, I don't recommend this, by the way, so I'm not endorsing driving across the country on 2 Red Bulls, but I had it in my mind that I needed to get this package to Tyler Perry. So I wrote him a letter, jumped in my car, and just started driving. 1 Red Bull, I get to Texas, really, really, really tired. Okay, I'll do another Red Bull. 2 Red Bulls, pull up to Tyler Perry Studios. They don't know who I am. I don't know anybody there. I pull up like I have an appointment. I'm like, hi. The guard's like, can I help you, ma'am? I was like, yeah, I'm here to see Tyler Perry. And he's like, do you have an appointment? And I was like, no. And he was like, okay. So he goes back to the guard shack and probably calls somebody. And I mean, it's like there's something to be said for tenacity. I have to say that, because like my whole life is a testament to that. I got in the gate, and the only reason he wasn't there that day is he was on sabbatical because his mom had just passed away. I met with his amazing executive assistant, Sunny, who is also very, very great advocate on behalf of a lot of child welfare. And she, bless her heart, she pushed my package to Tyler Perry Studios in Beverly Hills. She pushed it all over the country. And I was sitting in Encino parking lot in front of Trader Joe's one day. A few weeks later, my phone rings, and it's Atlanta. I'm like, oh, it's Atlanta. Who's this? So I pick it up. It's the president of Tyler Perry Studios. And I was like, oh. So I just stayed in my car, and he very kindly and politely informs me that domestic trafficking and these child welfare issues in your package are not currently on Mr. Perry's radar. And I let him finish, because I appreciated the call, no matter what he had to say to me. And I said to him, I said, and I'm not going to say his name, but I was like, yeah, I said, Mr. So-and-so, I said, I really, really appreciate your call and I respect your opinion, but I said, who are any of us to say what is in the heart of Tyler Perry? I said, one day you're going to remember this and you'll see that he cares about trafficking. And how many years forward now? He has a whole city he built for trafficking victims in Atlanta. I knew that he would care. And I know all these people it's just finding somebody. Sometimes it's somebody just feisty enough or fearless enough that just pushes it. Because it's like, I want to believe that if good-hearted people know what's going on with our children and other issues too, but I'm really, really passionate about our kids. So many horrible things are happening to our children right now with the quarantine. A lot of our foster kids are being trafficked. There's so much shenanigans going wild that I will be happy to talk to anybody about later, but it's like if people would just have somebody to give a voice and explain what's going on, and then at the same time simultaneously show them something meaningful they can do about it, I know we could really, really turn the tides on a lot of these issues. And like I was saying, for any of your charities and your initiatives that you have, I have a system basically that I have that the only thing in common they all have for every issue is they cost very little or nothing. And to me, it's just like something God has downloaded in me while I was going through my childhood. I have a gift of creating systems where they're really effective and they cost very little or nothing to implement. So that's basically what my charity is about. And when I was about to go on a tour with a big band from Nashville, this very powerful music producer became aware of my documentary, and I had this meeting with him in his office in Nashville, and he actually wanted me to go on a world tour with them, and I was going to speak about my book, and then everything for the first time in my life was finally coming together. I was so excited. Everything, it was like from going from a life where everything looked like everything that could blow up continued to blow up. This was perfect. It was like the equivalent of meeting him in his office and having him recognize my talent after watching my documentary and talking to me for several hours. He was like, you're going to go on the road with us. We're going to go on a world tour. So he clicked on his computer and he showed me a picture of Phillips Arena stage, and that's a very large arena in Atlanta. Oh, okay, thank you. And basically he was telling me, he was like, you belong on this level with your message. And I was excited about that on the one hand, because it's like the equivalent of, I don't know, American Idol charity version, and I didn't even have a contest, and here I won, because I have this guy, he's like, you're going on world tour, and you're gonna share your, I was like, that's really cool. The only trepidation I had right from the get-go was, my heart always wanted to do free events. Hope should be free. That's ingrained from my childhood. I was like, where is this going to leave my rural children? Where is this going to leave people who have no money? People that need the help the most don't have any money. I don't know. So this just was a very big conflict for me. So fast forward, I was getting groomed to go. He flew me to Texas to see me speak. And then I had this 18-wheeler accident. Completely breaks me from head to toe. And I lost my 6-figure income that afforded me the ability to be super independent, fund all my own trips and charity work. So I went from having everything to nothing like that. Completely broken. And I'll tell you, the thing that hurt more than the spine collapse, the broken ribs, the crushed ankle, what killed me and crushed me was all the messages I got from all the kids. Where are you? All of a sudden, this person that had built this bridge of trust with all these abused kids suddenly wasn't visiting them anymore. So I was very reliable. It was like, for them, I was the adult that represented something. they didn't understand I had a crushed spine and I was immobile and I lost my house, I lost my income, I lost everything. So basically the last few years I've just been scrambling just to keep my nose above the water because obviously I have no family background. So it's like, that's kind of goes without saying. When you have no family and you lose everything, you're just, on your own. So I've been scrambling just to get back on my feet somewhat. And in the middle of all that, through my contacts, DLA Piper, the international law firm down the street in Century City, they became aware of my work, and because everything I'm doing is in the wheelhouse of their charity interests, they adopted my charity and got my 501c3 back active again, for which I'm eternally grateful. And then the next thing that happened was, thankfully, due to Richard, in fact, he's been such a blessing. What an amazing man he is. It's like I'm so grateful to have met him. He suggested for my venue for the relaunch of Children's Compassion Network, the American Legion, which he's also on the board of directors of. So long story short, I've been in meetings with the American Legion to partner up because I love that they're national. And what's very, very interesting, and I'll wrap up with this if you want to just take this thought. I was at an event for the American Legion, and my foster moms, at the time I met her, they were engaged. So he was a veteran, and he used to take me to the VFW. And so I always had this profound respect, and I wish I had time to talk about Burley. It's in my book, but if you want to hear about him, I'll tell you. But when I went to the American Legion, there was this powerful familiarity that was inspiring something in me. And I recognized it after I analyzed it a lot. It's like all these things that really, really matter. So in the culture of the American Legion, for instance, they foster a culture where they share each other's traumas. They're there for each other. They do buddy checks. The Medal of Honors recipients, they're all about selfless acts and courage and caring for each other. These are all things that are like antidotes for much of what's wrong, I think, in our society, because people are just so Instagram, and I don't want to say any names, but role models. There's no role models for our kids. So it's like, I really feel like a lot of what is found in the American Legion, and by partnering up with them, and like the Medal of Honor winners, there is the actual curriculum that is free, that's available to schools. If we got that into 10% of our schools, my goodness, it's like to have even 1% of the kids in every school get that in their mind as a role model, that would transform everything. Because there's got to be some counter to all the reason kids are depressed. I mean, they're looking at Instagram. It's like, of course you don't look like that. Nobody does. So, if we can start resetting the conversation and the culture, so to speak, where people actually begin to care about each other and pay attention. And also with my charity, it's really, really about getting people engaged in the activities so they can see. So it's like I always say, we'll take your donation, but we really want your heart. I would really, really rather you also come and see what your money's doing. So transparency and really super high accountability is going to be very paramount with everything we do, because I come from the school of not wanting anything because I'm so wanting to have everything above board. So that's basically the concept of Children's Compassion Network. I know it's a little different than most people are used to saying or hearing about, because everybody's like, you need to pick one topic, and I'm like, no, I don't. I think I need to serve everybody. I think that's why God put me here, because I'm like a hub. So if you have initiatives that you would like to roll out, or if you have a place like in your childhood where you have deep trauma or something, it's really, really powerful to be able to go to a place of great pain for you. We could have a free event there. All my events are interactive, so I always engage with the kids or the people. And that's really the power of it, is authenticity. So, getting away from the fancy lights and the production. My events basically cost nothing to put on, and the effectiveness I would rival with any event that goes on anywhere, honestly. And I don't say that with arrogance. I think it's because people need something real. They need something authentic, and people don't need more fancy shows. We have plenty of flash and glitter and everything. So I think if we could just get back to like core values of kindness and compassion, I think we could really transform a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Raven, for your vulnerability, your firsthand views of what so many of the foster children are going through, and most importantly, for coming up here and speaking from the heart. I speak on behalf of everyone when I say it means a lot to have somebody come up here and talk the way that you did, so thank you so much. We as a club want to show our appreciation to you by presenting you with an electronic certificate from the nonprofit One Tree Planted, who will plant 20 trees in your name in Michelin, Mexico, as part of the Monarch Butterfly Restoration Project. I do want to end by thanking our greeters, Shelley Pearson, Sonia Brenner, for welcoming everybody in today. I want to thank Pat Johnson for coming up here and heading up the singing. Piano man Gary Ogden for running the keyboard as always. I want to thank the head table, Vicki Curtis for our invocation, Mitchell Krause for being the vice president's pick, Richard Lombardi for introducing our guest speaker, and of course President-elect Monica White for welcoming our visitors. Lastly, a special thanks to all of our visitors who joined us today. Thank you for coming back again. I reckon that both of them were at the Wine Fest and are here again today, so yay. Clearly the good luck of that night is holding strong. Next Friday, we are dark, just for the fun of it, so please don't come to the Hilton unless you have another activity to do here. However, we are live at Solidarity on Tuesday, April 9th. So for our monthly happy hour, I do hope you can join us for that. Our next meeting will be at the Hilton right here, April 19th, where John Zavelny will be conducting our Earth Day program. Now, as tonight's Clippers game happens to be James Harden bobblehead night, complete with the Combo beer, our thought of the day has to come directly from Mr. Harden. I wake up every day with the mindset to be the best, and no one can stop me but myself. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Just make sure she gets
Yeah, I got the whole thing to think of. It's like whenever I want a meeting, that seems to be the problem.
Thank you. Next week, well, see you Tuesday maybe. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.